Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teach Me Teacher, a podcast for educators where we, the teachers, become students ourselves. Here, we learn with laughter, music, and the latest research and experts across the field of education. But more importantly, we learn through honest conversations with real-world teachers and administrators in the classrooms we're experiencing today. I'm your host, Jacob Chastain, and today, ladies and gentlemen, I am bringing onto the show Laura Trubenbach. She is a high school Spanish teacher. She's a TikTok sensation, Instagram sensation. She's always showing her clothes. She's got all these side hustles going on. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the conversation. But in this talk, I want to talk about just what it's like to be a language teacher in high school. I know there's a lot of people that, sometimes they start out as general education teachers, then they go into language education, vice versa, or they just want to go and they're like, I want to be a Spanish teacher, and all of that. So hopefully we can kind of maybe clarify some misconceptions about the job, inspire you to jump into, maybe caution against some common pitfalls that people have, and all of the rest that comes with this conversation. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. Now, before we get to everything that we need to talk about in this, I want to tell you that this episode is sponsored by none other than Heinemann, the leading publisher of professional books and resources for educators, and their book, Teaching Writing in Small Groups by Jennifer Saravallo. Everyone's turning to groups in this unique school year so they can teach more efficiently and spread the learning further. Jen shows us how to make the most of small groups. She gives you 7 different options that help meet any student's needs, like strategy groups, guided writing, writing clubs, and more. She provides writing progressions to help you decide which students to group and why. There's even video that demonstrates Jen's teaching in a variety of classrooms. If you don't have teaching writing in small groups, head on over to Heinemann.com to read a sample chapter, find out what you're missing, and order yourself a copy. You can find that link also over there at teachmeteacherpodcastcomp11915, you guys. And because it is August and it's the beginning of the school year, we are also sponsored by PlanBook. PlanBook has been the established leader in online learning planning since 2010, offering collaborative lesson sharing, flexible administrator access, and even student view tools for just $15 a year. Using PlanBook, educators can build customized school years, classes, and lessons 100% online, directly inputting class materials and up-to-date standards from all over the world. Enter code TEACHME, that's one word, no spaces, TEACHME, at sign up to join over 800,000 PlanBook teachers today and get your first year for only $5. Thank you, PlanBook, for supporting the Teach Me Teacher podcast. And go out there, use that word, you guys, use Teach Me. Go get some discounts over there at PlanBook. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Today.
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me on, Jacob.
Wonderful, wonderful. You got the birds chirping behind you. It is sounding like it's summer where you are. This episode's not going to air until we have long gone past summer. So this will be a nice reminder for people. Like, oh yeah, there was a time when we sat and relaxed outside. Is that your happy place out there?
This is definitely my happy place, for sure.
In any case, I got to ask, just at the top, how are you feeling after this year of COVID? Is it because here in Texas, with a podcast that reaches, all across the United States and to other countries and stuff, I've had so many different realms of feedback from just what COVID has done. Some people never even stepped foot in their classrooms this year. Here in Texas, we were like, oh, it's August, let's go, right? And, we had like hybrid and all that other stuff, but it was pretty much like, we're here. So I'm curious at how are you, by the time summer came, were you super just frustrated with it and ready to take a break, or were you doing okay by the end of the year?
I was definitely ready for a break. We did hybrid. So we started in August, full force. We had kids in class in person. We had kids virtual at the same time. So getting adjusted to that was in itself a huge transition. And then got into that, but then it just kind of started getting tiring. And, you'd see one kid in your classroom one day, the next day they're on virtual. You had to make sure that everyone had the same resources, and so that was kind of tough. And so by the end of the year, I was ready for a break. I was like, it was time to be done, to reset, readjust. And but I tell you what, last year I grew as a teacher tremendously. Even though it was tough and it was very taxing, I can't say that I would have ventured out with the technology that I did, and just with all of the different avenues that we took as far as reaching those kids that needed help virtually and in person, and the ones that kept going back and forth. I just went out of the box. And so I feel better now, and I feel like a better teacher now that I've gone through all of that. I don't think I would have done that otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that this would be the time to where it was, with a lot of bad, I suppose it brought a lot of good as well, right? We had so many things that we got to experiment with, and we were kind of forced to experiment with some things in some ways. But I'm curious as to what the difference was for you. And this might be good to paint just kind of what you do in general, which is what's a typical kind of year feel like for a high school Spanish teacher? And then how did COVID change what you did? Was there anything specific that you used to rely on that you couldn't really rely on anymore?
Absolutely. Group work for us, group speaking, moving around the room, trading cards, whatever, just lots of conversation. And that was put to a halt when we were told we could only be in rows. We couldn't be grouped in tables. We couldn't be just moving around a lot. It just needed to be, everyone needed to have their space. And of course, wearing the masks. We had to wear masks every day. And, teaching a language, the kids depend on reading your lips. So that was a huge issue.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So you don't realize how much you depend on reading lips, but you do, especially with learning a new language. When they're trying to hear what you're saying, it helps for them to be able to see what you're saying as well. But you put a mask on and it's just wait, plus you're a little bit muffled. And so we kind of had to take a different turn with things. But we were able to adjust, and kind of once we got used to it, it was fine. But yeah, we had to do a lot more seat work than we're used to. We're usually up and around and, conversing. So that was kind of tough, and I really miss that. And I'm excited to get back in this year and just get back to what I know works. So yeah, that was the biggest adjustment, I think, as a language teacher with that.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't even think about the lips thing. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, we have here in Texas, our population of students tends to be, we have a lot of English language learners and English learners in general. Some people have been here for less than a year, and we have those in our general education classrooms. And as an English teacher, I do rely a lot on kind of that facial piece, right? And having all of that. And I could just imagine that just compounded the thing. So what were some of how did you overcome that? Did you just record videos of your mouth like that and just kind of use it that way?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I did. I did a lot of work outside of the classroom, recording different videos, and that was tough. That was, I had to, spend a lot of time creating resources that I was then able to put online for the kids and stuff. So, and the virtual kids also, they were seeing me through the computer, and I was wearing a mask. And so I was like, this is not working at all. So that's exactly what I did. I created more videos of me speaking so they could hear me speaking. And then we used a program called Flipgrid, and that was really helpful too. I used the heck out of that, and it became a really great resource because the kids could use it at home. So they could do whatever speaking activity that they wanted to at home and record it. And then I could see their mouth, and they could feel more comfortable about it and everything like that. So.
I mean, what would we have done without the ubiquity of cameras and stuff, right? Because even
Like, if
in like
10 years ago, oh my gosh, no way.
yeah, like even communities that, you know, might struggle with like, because I remember talking to a lot of people and they were like, you know, the problem isn't really devices. You know, everyone's got a phone these days, and you know, most people have computers. They might not have a bunch, and it might not be a fast computer, but a lot of people have them. It was like Wi-Fi issues that a lot of people were having, just the internet bandwidth kind of taxation on communities that were not equipped for all of this digital. And here in Texas, one of the big things that we had were like kind of the rural side, right? You know, everyone, like, you know, when people like talk about Texas, they, you know, you see like the horses and stuff, and that's true. Like on my way to work, like I live in like the Fort Worth area. There's definitely people with horses and stuff like that. Definitely exists here, but it's also like there's so many like isolated kind of communities that are not connected to kind of these bigger cities where the more extreme things. But so did you have any of those issues where you were, or was your community pretty equipped for kind of the one-to-one need of what was happening for hybrid?
No, our community is pretty equipped for it. Everyone had, you know, access to Wi-Fi and all of that. We're a one-to-one school, also a one-to-one district, so everybody had their Chromebook. So that was fine. It wasn't too bad.
You know, it's so funny. On your end, you got a motorcycle going. On my end, I got the trash people going. This is what happens during these summer podcasting sessions. I try. It's hilarious. No, it is what it is, man. This is what teaching is right here, right? It's
you got to go with the flow.
That's
work
right.
With what you got.
You never know what's going to happen. Kids could barge in. Something could, you know, last year we had so, you know, just picture, you know, kids wearing masks, and we have all these COVID things going on, and, you know, it's a different year. And then, you know, a baby possum just walks along the top of where my glass window is kind of on my campus. And then, so all the kids jump up, and then the possum falls in the hallway. And, you know, I'm able to keep my kids in the classroom so they're not running around, but every teacher could not say the same. So, you know, there's kids running around the hallway with this possum. I mean, that's what school is, you guys.
Yeah. You know, you got to figure out how to reel them back in and get done what you need to get done.
It is what it is. And so anyway, no harm, no foul with all these noises. It literally is exactly what it is. But I have to ask, though, because I'm going to be 100% honest. I always feel like I have confessionals when I talk to certain teachers on this show, because I sucked at so many classes, and I was horrible at Spanish, like high school Spanish. Like, I mean, I cheated and still failed a semester of it, right? Like, I mean, my I was on the drum line as a kid. So like you have to pass to march and stuff. And I had a lot of very nice teachers who knew that I wasn't necessarily the brightest kid in the bunch, but I had some skills. And they also knew I was kind of troubled. So like, you know what, let's help him on his grades a little bit. And that allowed me to march. But when marching season was over, the teachers were ruthless, man. Like they'd be like, no, you're done. You need to come to tutorials. You need to come retake this test. So I'm curious as to like, as a high school Spanish teacher, do you deal with a lot of student anxiety around language learning? Because I didn't know I had that until I started the class. But I don't know, is that common with kids that walk into your class for the first time?
Absolutely. That's probably the biggest hurdle for the kids to get through. And I don't think a lot of them actually ever get through it. They just figure out how to deal with it a little bit more. But yeah, their anxiety, of course, they're in high school, and, you know, talking to other people they don't know in English is an issue for them, I'm sure already. And then they're going to speak in a different language that they're not quite sure of, and they don't want to blow it in front of the whole class, or even in front of whoever they're paired up with for whatever particular activity. So I do a lot of think, pair, share, and basically they think about it first, or they can write it. They pair up with somebody. They usually, if somebody that like they know or are comfortable with, they share their idea, and then I kind of pair them up in a different way so that they're talking to somebody that they're not as familiar with or don't work with on a regular basis. So they have at least shared their idea with somebody else. Somebody has confirmed or affirmed that, yeah, that sounds right. And then they move on to somebody else that, you know, they're actually going to, or to the class that they're going to share it with too. So I try and alleviate as much anxiety as possible, because I mean, yeah, it's totally a thing. And I don't want that to be I don't want them to walk into my classroom and immediately feel anxiety. I want that to be a fun, safe space for them where we can really build a community as a classroom and just enjoy each other and the language and just grow a passion for it as well. Because that's also what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to prepare them for life. And I want them to enjoy this language, so therefore they can use it in the future with whatever travels that they have or whatever work experience they have. So I always want them to leave my classroom at the end of the year with a sense of calm and excitement and passion and having good memories about the language.
I feel like do you have to do a lot of like classroom team building in the beginning of the year just to kind of get that comfort level up? Because even though we teach different things, like in my classroom, I let kids write whatever they want, and that means going after their passions, what's bothering them, all of that. And it's very personal to put your voice out there, right? So I feel like we're in the same kind of realm of just language work, which is if we want students to kind of buy into what we're doing, if we want students to buy into really taking risk in the classroom and getting into that learning process where they interact with people and kind of play with this, you have to get kind of this, at least a bar somewhere of, okay, this is our comfort level in this class. So do you spend a lot of time doing that at the beginning of the year?
Absolutely. That's the first thing I do. The first day of school, I don't go over roles and all of that stuff. We immediately start with getting to know each other, and not in a cheesy way, but like legitly getting to know each other. You know what I mean? Like you said, I want them to have friends in the class that they can trust and they know is not going to make fun of them or anything like that, because that's a huge barrier for them as language learners. If they have anxiety and can't trust the other kids in the class and me as well, like they have to know that I'm not going to pounce on them for a mistake that they make in the language or anything like that. Or, you know what I mean? So it's like, if you don't practice it, and it's different than a lot of other subjects, you have to practice it to get better at it. It's not like you can just go cram for it the night before and then make a good grade on the test. Like you have to actually be using it. So that, I mean, it's huge for us to build a community in the classroom and, just really feel like a family atmosphere type thing. And so it's important to me, especially.
And what level of high school are you teaching at? I
teach levels 3 honors and AP. So I have mainly sophomores and juniors. But I've taught it all. I've taught level 1, level 2 honor, everything. I've taught it all.
So did you start out as a Spanish teacher?
No, I went to school for elementary education. And then I student taught second grade. And it wasn't for me. Like,
you noped right out of there, didn't you? Yeah.
It's not going to be successful for me. So I did a lot of soul searching and trying to figure out what to do from there, because I felt like I just wasted my entire, college career preparing for this profession that I thought was just going to be just wonderful. And I never even thought about teaching high school. I never even thought about it. I also majored in Spanish because I learned Spanish in Spain when I was little. I lived there with my family. And so I also majored in Spanish. And so that was just kind of for me to, fall back on or whatever. And it was also easy at the same time. I was able to do that like the back of my hand. So I did that. And then I started subbing. And that following year after I student taught. And then I was subbing a high school class, and the principal came down and was like, and it was actually the high school that I graduated from. So I knew the principal. He was the principal that I had in high school. And he was like, hey, I saw that you are, that you have Spanish as a major. And I was wondering if you could teach Spanish or would be interested in a long-term sub position, because they had a teacher that had to leave. And I was like, whoa. High school, I don't think so. No. Because, at the time, I'm like 21. I'm fairly older than these are. And so he was like, well, think about it. I could really use you. We're in a bind. So anyways, I went ahead and took the job as a long-term sub. And I got my Spanish certification while I was doing that. And then it's the rest is history. I'm going into 20 years next year. So, I mean, I don't know. Things happen for a reason. So it worked out well.
I love hearing the origin stories of how people got to teach what they teach, or like how they got into teaching anyway. I have a weird one that I've shared on the podcast a lot, but I feel the one thing I do want to connect to is, when I don't know, I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I was kind of like, I'm a creative person. I'm a musician. I knew I didn't want to major in music because music was like an outlet for me. Like I didn't want to, like mathematically map all of this stuff out. That kind of like ruined the fun of music for me. So I was like, like I ride and I'm creative and I have a personality that I can turn on and like entertain. So I was like, I don't know, communications, something like go to marketing, whatever. Long story short, I ended up wanting to go teach finally. And my initial thought was I was going to do high school. That was kind of where I thought I wanted to go. And then I ended up getting an offer from my high school English teacher, who I still stayed in contact with. So your story, just having those people, every one of my principals, except for the one I have now, has been someone that I knew as a high school kid because they were either my coach or they were a principal somewhere else or they were my teacher. I think that's just how Texas works. Like we just kind of stay where we are and just live in the same space forever. But the mindset of not being that much older, I could imagine was compounded for you at the high school level, just because even when I started out in 8th grade, they're like 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds or whatever. And I still felt like it's not that big of a gap. Like it is in a lot of ways, but it also isn't. You're like, oh, like y'all are like, it's just a few years ago that I was in your position. And it's very strange. So how did you, I know you said in second, so how long were you in kind of the elementary world?
Not for very long at all. Just my observation hours that I did and my student teaching, and then I was out.
So how long, what was it about second grade that like you knew that this was going to be bad? Like what was it that just didn't ring with you?
Well, okay. So like you said, you mentioned the kind of charisma, kind of, you can kind of turn it on and catch people's attention pretty well. And I couldn't do that because I have that too, I feel like. And I couldn't do that in the elementary classroom. The kids don't really, engage with that. Basically, their needs need to be met first, as far as they have to go to the bathroom and they're hungry and they, you know what I mean? Like they're are not wearing the shirt that they want to be wearing, or, you know what I mean? Like so many things can go wrong with their world. And so was like, okay, this is tiring for me. And I can't imagine, I wanted to imagine my future being, 40 years old and still working in the classroom. But I'm like, there's a way I'm going to make it like this. Like, it's just too tiring for me, and just being realistic with it. And I'm glad I did that and didn't try and fight it out, because I probably wouldn't still be teaching right now.
See, I think that's what is a cause of a lot of teacher burnout, right? Like it's no secret that, the majority of teachers leave between 1 and 5 years. And, there's a lot of teachers who quit. And I fully believe that a lot of people quit because of 2 reasons. Well, minus like you just hate teaching. Like there's also that, right? But like ignoring that, like I feel like a lot of people quit when they shouldn't, is because either they're at a campus that is toxic and negative, and I have seen those, and they are real and they are horrible, and they're hard to fix. And people who end up in a grade or a subject or something like that it just doesn't speak to them, and you feel kind of like a failure, right? Because it's like, oh my God, like you said it kind of at the beginning of this, where you jumped into second grade, you're like, okay, well, I just wasted all this time in college, and now I'm just kind of floundering. So I'm curious. So when you were like, second grade's horrible, I'm dying, or I will die if I stay here, and then you got this offer to go to high school, was it an immediate relief when you started interacting with the students, or did it take you time as well to get acclimated to just that level of dealing with people?
It took me time. It took me a lot of time, actually. That first year of teaching, and I would tell this to anybody starting out teaching, you can't just give it a year. I cried, I think, almost every day when I got home, because there are sophomores and juniors that I was working with, and it could be any age kid that they gave me a run for my money. Like, they knew my weaknesses, and it was just, it was tough. I was teaching level 1 or level 2 at that point. And a lot of kids that it was on level, a lot of kids, they just had to be there to get the credit. They thought, oh, a young teacher, it is a thing. Unfortunately, it is a thing. And so they'll try and eat your lunch. But my dad said, Laura, you can't give up after this 1 year. Like, you have to do it again. Like, you have to give it one more year, and then kind of base it off of that, because I was literally, I didn't think I was going to want to come back after that. But I think towards the end of the year, maybe even Christmas, I came back. I had reset after Christmas break, and I had done some research as far as classroom management, and I was like, I gotta figure something out, because I know I can do this. I know I can take control of my classroom. Like, I'm not gonna let them run the show. And I did. I tried some different strategies, and I was able to kind of survive the rest of the year. I wouldn't say be successful at it, but survive the rest of the year without pulling my hair out and crying myself to sleep every night. So
that's how it is, though, right? That first year is, and there are rock stars out there. I've seen new teachers come in that are freaks, and like, they're great. That's like the 1% of teachers, right? The rest of us have to suffer for like a year or more until you get a grasp of what is it like to manage insert age group. And it's different for every campus. It's different for every teacher, because you have to, like I said, I have this personality, and it definitely works in the classroom. You can't only bring personality to the classroom, because you're not a movie star. You're not an entertainer. Like, there's things that have to happen. So I don't know. I know I struggled with that. It took me and I still struggle with it, of like, only, like, when my classroom starts feeling like it's falling apart, you know what I mean? Like, towards like Christmas or like fall or like whenever, so there's a time when I'm like, wait, things aren't functioning correctly. It's usually because I've not ignored my strategies, but I've moved back into just the habit of, oh, I can control this. I'm a big personality. I can entertain 12-year-olds. And do you find yourself making that balance still after all of these years versus using your personality?
And I find myself getting complacent with something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of tired. I don't feel like, whatever. But then I quickly realize, oh, wait, that's very important routine that we need to keep doing. For me, the biggest thing that works is transitions and just maintaining like a very smooth class, like not giving the kids any downtime. Like, I already have my next activity. It's ready to go. Like, they don't even have a second to think about who they're about to talk to before we're starting into the next thing. And if they miss whatever it is that they like, the instructions or whatever, then they're kind of going down. So it's never a feeling of like, whew, we can sit back and relax for a second. Like, that's the thing that's helped me the most, is just to keep it going. So if they even stop to think about anything else, they're going to be lost. So, but yeah. And the other thing is just kind of making those relationships and forming those relationships, especially with the kids that are trying to give you a hard time. You just kind of get down to their level and figure out what makes them tick and figure out their, likes and interests, and just try and be like on their, help them realize you're on their side. You're not trying to, or you're not on the other team. Like, you're rooting for them. So what can we do to make this successful? And there's little things you can say to them, and little, gestures you can give to them. That's like tapping on their desk or whatever, and just making sure, like, hey, you're doing awesome. Or, like, hey, I know you can do better than this. Just little things like that, that it's not, demeaning to them or anything like that. And they can appreciate it a little bit more, so you can connect with them on that level. So
yeah, So with that, I feel like that transitions directly into something that there's going to be people that listen to this that are just Teach Me Teacher fans. They just love hearing educators talk. There's going to be people that find this episode, whether they follow you somewhere else, they get linked, or they just discover it through Googling, and maybe they're thinking they're like, oh my God, I don't know. Like, do I want to be a language teacher? I feel like language teaching is such a, it's either like you get how needed it is in a country like ours, or just in general, and how really like that you guys y'all do such amazing work in terms of just getting kids comfortable with different cultures and language and being able to communicate. And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around this, but if there was a teacher on the fence about whether they really wanted to invest in kind of becoming a language teacher at the high school level or wherever, what would you say to them in terms of encouraging them one way or another? What are the realities and the stuff that keeps you doing it after all this time?
Okay, so what actually keeps me doing it after all this time? I kind of feel like I have the best of both worlds, because going to school for elementary education, I loved all of the the little fun stuff, all the little arts and crafts and all the that fun stuff. But I feel like with teaching a language, you're basically teaching that type of content just to bigger kids. And so we're still able to do the alphabet song. And, if you teach that level, you're still you're teaching colors and you're teaching seasons and all the fun things, but just usually to an older audience instead.
That's hilarious. I didn't even think of it like that.
You know what I mean? So I feel like it's the best of both worlds for me. So I can just still do tons of little activities, and which you don't do in a math class or algebra class or history class a lot of the times. So I feel like if I'm not doing a fun activity that is getting the kids engaged, then they're going to be bored and I'm going to be bored, and I hate feeling bored. So I'm always trying new things, and I'm always trying different games and all that. And you can play games, all class long, and they're still getting what they need to get as far as the content. So
that's really hilarious. What an interesting connection that I had no idea would be made right there, man. So if you're feeling like teaching the younger bracket, but you're like, you know what, these kids aren't speaking to me, language might be where it's at. You get the QT stuff, you get to do the alphabet and everything. That's awesome.
Though, for teaching a language is always continuing to grow yourself as far as your content is concerned. I think that's with every teacher, any kind of content they have. I'm always reading in the language. I'm always watching and listening to the music in the language. And so I'm always trying to push myself to improve, even if I feel like, I'm very good at it. I mean, I speak it fluently, but I'm just always pushing myself to learn new vocabulary, and because it always comes up as I teach AP. So there's always words that come up, and it's pretty rigorous as far as the curriculum is concerned. And so there's different readings or articles that we're looking at, and I'm like, I don't know that word. So I'm always pushing myself to make sure I'm up on it and continuing to learn also.
Laura, if people wanted to stay in contact with you, I want to let you give a shout out to all the extra stuff that you do, because you have a million things that are going down on your social media stuff. So go ahead, plug all your great stuff, and then tell people where they can find you if they wanted to stay in contact and follow all of your greatness.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm on Instagram at LauraTrue_teacher. I love teacher fashion. I love clothes. So I thought might as well just put some energy into that and have a little side hustle going on. So I do that. I share all my outfits, plus teacher stuff, mom stuff. Also, I'm a boy mom. I have 2 boys, one's 7 and one's 10. So all of that kind of fun activity of life. And then I'm also on TikTok at LauraTrue_teacher. I like to just do fun videos and everything like that. I got started during COVID, just like everybody else, I think. And we had a little extra time and I needed an outlet. And I found that was actually successful for me. And so that's how I got started doing, just kind of sharing I just like to share. I don't have a lot of expectation out of it. I just like to share, and I feel like I connect with a lot of people, and people can relate to me too. So, yeah.
That's the best kind, though, right? Like, it's usually when people come with an agenda to something, it doesn't work. It's like when it's just, hey, this is just what I do. You can come along or not.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
wild, though. You started TikTok in COVID times, and you're like at 40,000 people last time I checked. So that's wild. Congratulations. That's awesome. And that is it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Go check out Laura Trubenbach over there on Instagram, TikTok, and everything else. She is quite the pleasure to chat with. Hopefully the birds and all the interruptions and whatnot that were happening in the background weren't too distracting. If they were, it's okay, because that's how teaching is. Sometimes we deal with distractions. That's what we're doing on this episode. But she was fantastic to talk to. Absolutely love. If you're here because of her, if she pointed you here to the podcast, welcome. If you stumbled across Teach Me Teacher podcast, welcome. We cover a lot of topics here. We've done well over 200 episodes at this point, and we're going to continue doing that. We drop an episode every single Monday. This is season 6 of the podcast, and we are just now getting going in this season. We have so many amazing guests, big and small, and I cannot wait. And we're in the work to bring back some favorites from the podcast. So if you have someone that you want us to check back in with, send me a DM and I'll see if I can make that happen. I'm trying to make season 6 just the most well-rounded season that I possibly can. So we'll see what happens from all of that, ladies and gentlemen. But if you like this episode, please hit subscribe so you don't miss any other episodes. Review the show, leave a rating and some kind words really does help. A couple of y'all have already been adding to the reviews. Must be some new listeners. So thank you for that. It really, really, really does help the podcast. If you would like to check out my book, Teach Me Teacher, it's my memoir, it's my personal story, it's basically my love letter to education. You can over there on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Reach out to me if you want a signed special copy, or if you want to do some type of book study with your school. I would love to join via Zoom or something like that. If you want me to come speak, you could reach out from my contact page over there at teachmeteacherpodcast.com. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you are all staying safe, staying motivated, and keeping the people around you loved and secure and supported. But for everything else, ladies and gentlemen, have a good one.